I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hey there, spooky nerds. Welcome to Talking Strange, the paranormal pop culture podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Aaron Sagers. Also can catch me on 28 Days Haunted on Netflix and Paranormal Caught on Camera on Travel Channel and the Max streaming service. And you can also catch me out and about in the world looking for the strange and the unusual, or in this case, looking for a thrill at Halloween Horror Nights in Universal Orlando. And you may not tell it if you're watching the video. You probably can't tell based on this very flat white background, but I'm in a very colorful hotel, the Cabana Bay Resort at Universal Orlando. And just last night, I did go to Halloween Horror Nights. Always so excited to go there. Ever since growing up here in Orlando, I have loved that every year as it rolls around. And this year is no different. As obviously a monster kid, a spooky kid, a creepy kid, I love haunted house attractions as much as I love haunted houses themselves. And this year, the attraction, the Halloween Horror Nights, again, a collection of sort of the houses based on film and TV properties versus houses that are these original concept creations. And they killed it. Like the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire haunted house was cool, I guess, pun intended. I love that one as far as the best sort of IP-based house. And it also had a lot of nods to the previous Ghostbuster franchises, which I really dug. And I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone that might be coming to Halloween Horror Nights. But my favorite, I think, was... So the Insidious house, also creepy. I liked that one. But I think my favorite houses were the original concept houses, such as Slaughter Cinema or Slaughter Cinema 2, because it's a sequel haunted house attraction to one they did a couple of years ago. And it was kind of a collection of grindhouse films that they had created, had conceptualized, and brought them to life through trailers that were being projected on the side of a building as a drive-in theater. And then you walk through the house and you see all sorts of creatures and monsters that are stalking the I guess us, the people that have walked into the movies. Also, I liked this Triplets of Terror house that was sort of about these triplet slasher kids that would wear kind of cute little masks. Well, not cute because they got real bloody. And I'm trying to think what else. What were my other favorite ones? I don't know. It was just another really good year for Halloween Horror Nights. So do check it out if you can make your way down here. And I'm continuing my time in Orlando because we have the first ever Spooky Explorers Club, which is a not so scary paranormal event that I'm hosting at Walt Disney World with my friends Shane Pittman and Becky Ann Galentine and Jason Sorrell, the former Disney Imagineer, where we're going to be talking about Disney lore and hauntings, and then going into the park for some fun. So here for that. So keep an eye on social media for the photos to catch a glimpse into the excitement. And then hopefully you'll be able to join us at a future Spooky Explorers Club event. But on to today's episode, because I have two guests that I was really looking forward to talking to, and they did not fail to impress me with what they had to say. Just really got a kick talking with them. It's Mark Duplass and Joshua Rofé. Now, Josh, I've spoken to before. He's a director and executive producer behind the acclaimed Hulu series Sasquatch, which premiered at the 2021 South by Southwest Film Festival. And my interviews with him are out there. Before this was Talking Strange, we called it the Paranormal Pop Culture Hour, and I spoke with Josh for that. Previously, he directed and executive produced the 4-part Amazon Prime documentary series Lorena, as well as the documentary Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed. And Mark Duplass is, you know him, you know his face, you know his name, award-winning actor, filmmaker, producer. The guy's done everything, it seems like. As an actor, he was on the Apple Plus series, The Morning Show, for which he received two Emmy nominations and a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor. He was one of the stars of the show Togetherness, which he co-created with his brother Jay. He was on camera. His feature film credits include The Puffy Chair, which he co-wrote and co-directed, the indie sensation Hump Day. He also is behind the sci-fi films The One I Love and Safety Not Guaranteed. Safety Not Guaranteed, I happen to really dig, and the Creep horror franchise. And together, they're executive producers on the new Hulu series Out There, Crimes of the Paranormal, which premieres with all 8 episodes, on September 24th. Let me tell you more about Out There. Out There takes you inside these 8 true crime cases that have these shocking encounters with the paranormal world. And they explore this through eyewitness accounts, expert interviews, and all new investigations. And in each case, amidst a search for answers, there's always this one rumor that emerges, and it's that something inhuman might be afoot. And these in depth investigations take us into towns and cities across North America where they speak to individuals and eyewitnesses who say that supernatural events have changed their lives forever. Some of the stories include one about a 6-year-old boy in the Smoky Mountains who disappeared forever after being snatched by an ape-like beast. Sounds perhaps familiar. There's also a story about a UFO crash in Long Island that sparked an assassination attempt and illuminated this really big political conspiracy. There's an episode about an occult coven of Satanic, that's implicated in a decades-old New Jersey murder. And then even about lonely ghosts in San Francisco's Chinatown neighborhood that threaten to steal the lives of the unmarried. So throughout all these stories, Out There tracks down fresh leads, uncovers new evidence, and takes a lot of twists and turns. And really, it's a show about mythology, about the allure of the paranormal, and maybe the real monsters and creatures that dwell amongst us. And the monsters being us as well sometimes. I found this to be a compelling piece of documentary TV that delves into the creepy topics of the paranormal and true crime in a non-judgmental way. And we've seen that before, where it's people are ridiculed for what they're saying is their experiences with the paranormal. This does not do that. And it uncovers some really interesting stuff through its interviews and its research. So let's get to it. We're going to talk to executive producers of Out There, Josh and Mark. For both of you guys, just at the top, I'm curious, with your backgrounds, Mark, I understand you were, born and raised in New Orleans, then logged some time in Austin, and were raised Catholic like myself. And Josh, for you, growing up in New York, what was sort of about your upbringing that made you feel like a connection to these types of stories enough to dedicate, previously having done the miniseries Sasquatch, but now 8 episodes of this? What was sort of the in your DNA that led to this?
I mean, for me, it was New York and New Jersey, and mostly New Jersey. And I think I might have mentioned this the last time we spoke. When I was a kid, probably ages 10 to 12, I went to camp in the summer in the Pine Barrens, and there would be a sleepover once a month. And while I'm sure it was not the Jersey Devil, it was some counselors running around scaring the shit out of these little kids. I was afraid in the woods, you know. I was afraid in the woods, more specifically of the Jersey Devil. And that's a feeling that you never shake, and that's a feeling that I love. I love the month of October. I love the feeling that I get uh, when I'm watching The Exorcist, or when I'm watching Halloween, or when I'm watching uh, any of the Nightmare on Elm Street feelings. To me, that is warm and cozy. I know that's weird. And so when we were making Sasquatch, that itch was very much being scratched, and the story was incredible. And Mark and I and the rest of our team, we just started we started to come across these other stories that they were similar in nature, different paranormal entities, different cryptids, and all of them said something different, but equally deep about humanity, the brokenness in humanity. And we knew that we could make a great series if we had the opportunity to tell a bunch more of these. And so that was really that was where that's kind of where it began.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember very early on when Josh and I were talking about the Sasquatch series and then subsequently trying to spin this out into something, that could live and honor the rest of these stories, this question kept coming up, like, who's the real monster? Is it the cryptids themselves or is it us? And that was always fascinating to me. And I did grow up Catholic in New Orleans, and I am a very pragmatic person, and I had decided very early on that I don't really believe in any of this stuff, and this is just lore. Yet when I was like 12, I found myself at a slumber party and somebody brought out a Ouija board. And I immediately was like, I'm not playing with that. And they were like, what are you talking about? You don't believe in any of this stuff. And I was like, just in case. I don't want to mess with this just in case. And I think there's something in this series. There will be those who will be, I think, skeptical coming in, as rightfully they should. But there's always that little element of us that's like, but maybe is that possibly real? And that's always fascinated me.
Hmm. Yeah, the skepticism element of it. I always say that as a journalist, you're supposed to be skeptical, open-minded, asking questions, but open-minded ultimately, as opposed to
Yeah.
cynical, which is closed-minded. So with this series, as you're approaching these stories and interviewing these people, what is sort of the balance that you're striking about being open-minded and listening to these people's stories, honestly, but still pushing on them to get the story and get to as much truth as you can, and how much can you push without taking it too far? Josh, you want to start on that?
Yeah, I remember. So the showrunner on this, her name's Allie Orton. She is unreal, unreal. This show doesn't exist without her, without her. She's incredible. And then every episode had its own director. A couple directors did a few episodes, but there was this handful of directors who took on these episodes. And I remember in our earliest conversations, whether it was with Allie or the directors, and then sort of all of us as a group, even further out on the team, the researchers, the editors, just we kept talking about, and I kept coming back to when we were making Sasquatch. If I'm interviewing people who believe that Sasquatch exists, I am treating them with the same dignity that I would a person who is telling me their story of a horrific assault that they experienced. And if I treat them with the same dignity and I take them and it seriously, we will get to something interesting. There's no question. And and so I think that is what we all just had in mind. And to your point about journalism, it's obviously so similar to making a doc. You need to be a skeptic, but you have to have this part of you that's just open to the truth and excited by new information. And so the constant, chase of that rinse and repeat is eventually what sort of gives you these episodes.
And Mark, just to add to that, the approach of speaking to these people, and there might be some people that have some pretty out there ideas, but
Mhm.
the world is strange, the universe is strange. What's the balance of, not taking the bait of treating people like rubes, because that is so tempting to do, and that's something we've seen a million times before, is, someone tells you a wild story and then you play the X-Files or Exorcist theme song, and then suddenly they look like a joke. So as you're going through this process, yeah, how do you avoid listening to them without going taking the bait of treating them like rubes?
I mean, it's a great question, and a lot of that does come down to hiring directors that embody that sort of respect that Josh was previously talking about. But I mean, the truth is, like, we're just not interested in that. We've seen those shows, and those shows have been made before, and we're not good at making those shows. We don't claim to be that show. For me, I come from the independent film space and the independent documentary space, and documentaries like Marwan Call are fascinating to me, where you approach this subject who clearly has had this traumatic event and believes something to be true and is approached with respect. And that's just what you do. And I look at that subject the same as we look at someone who, believes they were told by a cryptid that they needed to place this bomb, because that is their truth. And so it's not as simple as that, but if you keep that as a North Star, I think it keeps you centered in the right spot.
Yeah. I have to say to your credits, I know a lot of these stories, and I still, having researched a lot of this stuff myself, and I learned quite a bit with the episodes I did see. I haven't seen all of them, but I'm definitely going to because I'm very much into it. It almost seems like the case that you're talking about, where someone believes that lizard people and they're compelled to place bombs and everything. Well, within that, there's this epic failure of authorities that dismiss this because it's such a tinfoil crackpot idea. So it's almost like within the scope of the series, you have this spectrum of belief, if you will, people that believe too much, and that is a theme where it gets them into trouble. But then the flip side is people not believing that this is a anything at all worth taking seriously, which means they have blinders on, scales over their eyes, and they miss things. Is that kind of a pattern that you set out with, or maybe I'm misreading too much into it, but is that something that you see through the scope of these episodes, Josh?
First of all, it's so interesting to hear somebody else have a takeaway. We've been in this for so long, and
Yeah, very few people have seen these things, so it's
yeah,
fast.
that was so fascinating. And nobody has brought up, in our conversations, nobody even brought up what you just said, which frankly feels spot on. Every time out, we're trying to get to the truth. We're trying to understand, how does something like this happen? And it's always it's a confluence of events it's the perfect storm every single time. And yeah, it's something's too silly or not silly enough, right? And if you sort of end up a little bit further down the middle, things might not spiral. That is a fascinating assessment, and yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your take is on this, Aaron, because I feel like you have been in this space and exist in this space, and probably can speak from a much more educated standpoint than Josh and I can. But I'm thinking about, the time in the, 80s and 90s when a lot of these theories, stories were much more marginalized into, cable access television, and bizarre talk radio shows. And then you get the internet, and then you get Reddit, and then these things expand and they have the chance to get bigger. And then I feel like, at times some of these beliefs can be weaponized, by people. And I'm not sure how much you see of that on your end, because we did see some of that in our research, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's to me, I look at it a lot like you know, people that are overzealous, let's say, with their religious beliefs, of which I have family members in that
Mhm.
category, that they a lot of times I say conspiracy theories are no longer any fun because we've moved into such a dark territory with it that it's not just debating whether or not Kubrick shot the moon landing. It's seriously dark stuff. But
Which he
um,
did.
yeah, well, yeah, of course, yeah, no question about that. But that these beliefs and ideas become almost dogmatic for people to the point that they are so entrenched that not only it can be weaponized against them, as you guys point out, but there's no going back. They're so entrenched in this that there's no going back.
Yeah.
Um, throughout the course of this, was there any story that you started researching and looking at that you thought, okay, that might be a bridge too far? I mean, also pardon that expression considering one of the episodes, it's a Goatman bridge, but this might be a little bit too outside of our wheelhouse or our mission statement about what we are trying to do, and we can't quite fit this one in. Any stories couldn't quite? bring to the fore?
The stories that that didn't make it into the final eight, they really they all lacked something either in, let's call it, the grounded documentary sense, or the genre paranormal cryptid sense. And so there was nothing that felt just too wild and too out there. It was just we sort of we put them through our own, our own sort of just process of, if you get to the if you get to the end of an edit a number of months from now, will this be able to bear fruit?
Yeah.
And it was it was easy to say no to those, actually. And then when we got to these, they all felt undeniable to us.
There's like a natural funnel that happens as you sort of start sifting through it. This like, we're gonna make this, out there crimes of the paranormal series. Then it's just like a blast of ideas. Every single conspiracy theory you can possibly imagine comes in. That's the wide part of the funnel. And then we start thinking, is this human enough? Does this genre element do enough? And then the funnel itself just starts getting smaller and smaller, and it winnows down to, essentially what we're left with these eight stories. But even, speaking candidly, even when we pick the eight, there's still an element of chase and chance that's involved because we don't actually know what's going to happen. These aren't that scripted. So we actually had a bunch of unexpected things happen and found ourselves taking left turns and right turns. And oh my God, this episode ended up way different than we thought it would. This episode ended up turning out to be way more about one family's collective trauma than we thought it would. And then this episode, actually, wow, there's a lot more credibility to the actual cryptid here than we thought. This feels more legitimate than we even thought. So that part is actually, I think, part of what keeps you alive as a documentary filmmaker, is those surprises and figuring out how to deal with these little surprises that come up and make them dovetail with your original vision of the episode in a way that feels cohesive. And that's the trick.
Mark, can you give me an example of one of a surprise, or finding there might be a little bit more credibility behind a potential cryptid that kind of made you zag a little bit instead of zigging where you thought you were going?
So, I mean, all of them probably. But I would say, for me, like when you brought up earlier our pilot episode of the web of the lizard people. To me, that it is, you read that headline. If you're a regular person who doesn't believe in these things, you make a snap judgment usually about this person who has behaved based upon a piece of information that would probably not make you behave similarly. And then you start to realize that the extreme closed-mindedness and denial of that information actually harmed the ability to properly research this thing, and actually led to some injustices that could have been saved if there was just that much more of an open mind. And I felt implicated in a way where I'm busy. I'm that guy in the conversation every now and then who just reads the headline and reads the first paragraph, and then I go off and shoot my mouth off at a dinner party as if I know what I'm talking about. And that stuff was the stuff that really caught me.
Yeah. The the thing that I have to again credit you guys, because with these episodes, thus are all the ones that I've seen are all very modern takes. So it's not like you were just looking into the distant past. These are things that are pretty contemporary, which I appreciate because it obviously feels very relevant to right now. But you talk about sort of, again, kind of not to harp too much on the lizard man stuff, but or the bridge goatman bridge, that when you start talking about these things, the more that it's out there, the more it's elevated, the more people, are hearing about it, and then they become fascinated because this is exciting stuff, even if it is nefarious behind the scenes with certain bad actors. Was there how do you tread that line of talking about these stories but also being aware that this series itself could actually be elevating those stories and playing into some of that temptation to go visit a bridge, or the dark fascination with some of the lizard man communities and things like that? You see where I'm going here? Like, how are you kind of threading that needle of not becoming part of the problem?
That's a huge part of our conversation when we're making this. When you, as you know from your job, when you're interviewing and you're in the field, you want to be aware of all those things, and you're always trying to sort of keep track of where you are with the line. You you want to go over the line in conversation in interviews, because when you then get into the editing room, you have the ability to bring it back and really dial in what you're going to put out there. When you're having conversations and interviews, the line can move. You can go over it. People can say whatever they want to say, and then our responsibility ultimately is when we get into the editing room, we need to dial this thing in a way that is truthful and is grounded. And what we always came back to is this thing that we were talking about endlessly on Sasquatch, which is the monster is us. It's always human, in one way or another. And so if we use that as sort of a guardrail, then we're not just going to drift off into something salacious and allow this thing to become romantic in all the wrong ways. And so it's always about just bringing it back to something that is just so distinctly human and so undeniably real. And if you look at it through that lens, then I think you can actually have an honest relationship with something that seems really, I didn't mean to do this, but really out there.
He said the thing. He said the title. Like the but Mark, do you and I get it, like, and this is a question for you too, Josh, but like the not taking a stand, really. I mean, you might say that that's what a documentarian is supposed to do or not do, I guess. You're not ultimately judging the story. But should you? Do you think, I mean, do you think that not taking a, I mean, was there a temptation to ever take a stand and say, look, this story, maybe this is a little bit wacky, or maybe John Ford was really, set up and this is screwy and weirder. We think this is weirder than it takes. I mean, yeah, talk about taking a stand or not, especially with these stories.
That's a good question because, there is no catch-all answer, as a documentarian and sure as you know, as a journalist, And I think that when you look at say a documentary film like The Thin Blue Line, it's like, yeah, we're going to take a stand here. This documentary is a piece of journalism. This documentary is a piece of resistance. And that's what that is about. We are in the, I would say, fortunate position to be able to more objectively present these stories and their complexities in a show like Out There. That being said, I would say there are what I would call little micro stands that you can take within each episode that are not saying, yes, this is the result of a cryptid, or no, this is, the result of a manipulation due to the culture or whatnot. And you can say, well, we have discovered a truth here in this episode that this family came across injustice after injustice after injustice, and one stand we take here is to tell that truth, because they've been treated so horribly. And within that episode, that is a bit of a stand that we take.
Yeah.
We're in a really fortunate position with this show where it's not a piece of propaganda. We get to just present these stories.
Yeah. Just I know we're running out of time, but just a couple quick kind of silly questions. But also, I've been out there in the field thinking this story of like this haunted or creepy, a ghost clown or whatever sounds silly, and then suddenly you get out in those communities and it's like, okay, I'm actually legitimately creeped out. Whatever is going on out here, I'm actually legit creeped out. So I guess before we go, was there a moment with these stories where maybe you were out there in the field where you guys got creeped out? Did you have any of those experiences? And if not through production, just in your own life, maybe that creepy old house at the end of the block or some sort of story that has sincerely creeped you out. So take it in one of those two directions. Josh.
In a very general sense, I often, hey, I have my life. I have my insular life that I see through my own eyes, right? And then I go and I make a documentary. And all of a sudden I'm in this place in Indiana, I'm in this place in Northern California, I'm in this place in New York, and and I'm with people and I'm in their homes and I'm at their kitchen tables, and I suddenly can understand why they believe what they believe. And that happens to me time and time again. And that's my favorite thing about making documentaries. And within that, I I feel less judgmental, and frankly, I feel more open-minded, and then even fascinated to sort of dive deeper into a story. And so I feel as though these stories are that when you're in the field making these episodes or making Sasquatch, and you're with somebody whose life has been so profoundly affected by whatever this particular thing is, that the episode is about, you get it and you feel it, and then we try to translate that through the camera and through the edit, um, and and make the audience feel that thing that and Mark knows and I know you feel when you're just out somewhere with folks diving in. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's all I
I
got.
think you did. I was going to say that from a filmmaking perspective, that was perfectly answered. I'll take the sillier side of my own personal version of these stories, which is, there's that great book out there, if you haven't read it, called The Body Keeps the Score. That does, our traumas and the things that have happened to us. They're not just things that we deal with in our mind. Our bodies have involuntary reactions to these things. They carry them with us, and for me, I have a very small swimming pool in my backyard. And I like to occasionally, when the kids are asleep, go back in the dark and just get into my pool at night. And every single time I do it, I know, my brain knows, I'm in a swimming pool. There are no sharks in here. I'm in a swimming pool. But I saw Jaws in 1982 when I was 5 years old, and I was too early. So when my legs are dangling underneath water and they're not touching anything, there's only one thing my body knows. You're going to be eaten by a shark within the next 10 seconds, and I cannot transcend it.
You're just the poor Kittner boy, just waiting to happen in
Yeah,
here.
waiting to go down. Yeah.
Guys, we are out of time, but it's really I do thoroughly enjoy the episodes I've seen so far. I can't wait to go through the rest. And Josh, so good to talk to you again, man. Really appreciate your work. And Mark, nice speaking with you. Hopefully we get to do this again, and best of luck with Out There.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.
And that was Mark Duplass and Joshua Rofé, executive producers of the new Hulu series Out There, Crimes of the Paranormal, which premieres with all 8 episodes on September 24th. Again, I dug it. I think it's compelling. It's for fans of true crime as well as fans of the paranormal. And it's not trying to convert you to believe or not believe. In fact, it kind of takes a very steady approach to this. So I would say have a look at it on Hulu, September 24th, all 8 episodes. All right, spooky nerds, this has been Talking Strange. I have been and continue to be, and hopefully will remain, Aaron Sagers. And until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.